If you've ever been in the ocean and accidentally drifted out into deep water, well, you know how it happens. You don't necessarily feel it at first, but then you look up and you're just way farther from the shore than you meant to be. I want us to think about that metaphor as we think about Genesis 6, because the flood didn't begin with rain. It began with drift. Listen to Genesis 6, verse 2. Moses tells us that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Now that's a short verse, but I think it's a warning flare because it gives us a familiar pattern that shows up everywhere sin starts spreading. Notice they saw, they wanted, and they took. Now that's not new, is it? No, that's Eden all over again. Remember, Eve saw, and then she desired, and she took. And now it's happening again, but now it's happening on a more cosmic scale. You see, the enemy is not finished doing everything it can to undermine God's plans for humanity. So let's think about this passage. Who are the sons of God? Well, I think that's important because in the language of the Old Testament, oftentimes, places like Job and other places, that phrase, sons of God, points to heavenly beings. Think about members of God's divine council, high-level spiritual beings that God created to serve him are now rebelling. So this rebellion is not just human, but now we see the rebellion of the divine in even a more cosmic way. So here's what's happening. High-level heavenly beings refuse their assigned place. Jude later describes, I think, this account where he says angels who did not stay within their own position of authority and left their proper dwelling. Okay, so that's the idea of Genesis 6 here. Beings who should have stayed in their place, should have known what they were created for, step out of bounds. They disregard God's order. They disregard his authority. They reject his design, and they act like those boundaries don't apply to them. And then they move toward human women with a predatory kind of autonomy. Moses uses these blunt verbs here. This is not romanticized. He says they saw, they took, any they chose. Now that last phrase is a giveaway. This isn't covenant love. This is appetite with power. This is self-rule. This is, hey, if I want it, then I get it. There's no restraint, no reverence, no submission to God's design. And the fruit of that rebellion spills into the human world as domination and even what the Bible calls men of renown. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, it connects this to the Nephilim, to the mighty men, these men of renown. I think very likely the offspring of these unholy unions of the sons of God and the daughters of men. So, but whatever all these details means, what's clear is that this crossing of boundaries amplifies corruption in the world. It produces a culture that celebrates a strength but without righteousness, a power but without holiness, a fame but one without the fear of God. And that kind of world doesn't get better. It gets harsher. It gets more violent. That's why Genesis 6 doesn't say things were getting bad. It says the earth became filled with violence. When God's order is violated, the world doesn't become freer. It becomes more brutal. Now, here's why that matters for us today. Most people don't wake up one day and decide, you know what, today I'm going to go ruin my life. No. We drift. Okay, now the sons of God weren't drifting. They were making very intentional actions. But when it comes to us and when it comes to boundaries, I want us to think about how we drift, and ultimately that drift leads us to deciding to violate a boundary. All right? We just excuse something small today. Maybe we allow something that's private that maybe shouldn't be. We normalize something that we used to resist. And then one day we're looking up and, well, we're not near the shore anymore. And so what do we do with this? Well, two simple truths. First of all, God sees drift before you feel it. All right? You might be saying, look, God, I'm fine. Everything's good. You might be functioning good, going to church, doing your quiet times right. But God sees it, right? He's not fooled. And when God warns you, He's not trying to shame you. It's always to rescue you. His boundaries, they're not cages. They're guardrails. They don't trap life. They protect life. And secondly, drift is defeated by one honest step back toward God, back toward His wisdom, back toward His order. You don't fix drift by making a speech about how serious you are. You fix drift by turning early in the process. So here's a question to ask today. Where have I started treating a boundary like it's optional? Maybe a habit that's quietly dulling your appetite for God. Maybe it's a relationship that's pulling you into some sort of compromise. A screen that you keep going back to. Maybe it's a tone you keep justifying. A bitterness that you keep feeding. Or maybe there's just small dishonesty that you just keep repeating. It's drift. And drift doesn't feel dramatic, but it always goes somewhere. Oh, but here's the good news. The same God who sees drift is also the God who gives grace. He doesn't call you back because He's trying to ruin your fun. He calls you back because He knows where that road ends. He knows the danger that's at the end of that path. So don't wait until you feel far from God. If the Spirit's putting His finger on something right now, feel it as mercy, because that's what it is. Hey, here's what I want you to do today. Pick one area of your life where you've felt drift, where you think maybe there has been some drift here, some thoughts, some habits, desires, whatever it is, and take one clear step back to God through wisdom. Don't do it tomorrow, not next week. Let's do it today. Maybe it's something you delete, so delete it, confess it, block it, apologize, ask for help. Rebuild that boundary that God says is essential to life. Hey, this Sunday we're going to keep walking through Genesis 6 and see what happens when drift becomes a flood and why God's judgment is real, but how His grace still makes a way in it all. So stay close to the Lord this week. That's the Pastor's Devotion. Come back and see me tomorrow, and I'll see you this Sunday.